What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the Game Week 6 preview. So I'm going to go through a little bit of information that we got last night, especially with the lineups in the Champions League. And then I'm going to go through some of your questions as well. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, let's get into it. So let's start with some good news for the 815,640 other FPL managers like me that own Bruno Fernandes. His red card suspension has been overturned and he won't miss any matches. Some people might see that as a good thing. Some people might see it as a bad thing. Either way, you can now make your decision of what you want to do with him based off the knowledge that he is going to play in Game Week 7, 8 and 9. If you still want to sell him, absolutely fine. If you want to keep hold of him, absolutely fine. I'm sure no one's buying him right now, but he's not going to miss any games. So I thought I'd start off with something to brighten up your day. Let's talk about the midweek lineups. Let's start off with Arsenal against PSG, and Bukayo Saka went off in the 91st minute, so he got about a 3-minute rest and should be good to go against Southampton at home in Game Week 7. We know Havertz is the main number 9 at the moment. That's not going to change anytime soon. Two players that people have asked about quite a bit this week are Martinelli and Trossard. Now, at the moment, both are starting with Odegaard out injured, and I'm not quite sure when he's going to be back. If I check the FPL page, I suspect it's going to say after the next international break. Let me have a quick look here. Yeah, expected back 19th of October, so that's Game Week 8. I'm not sure how accurate that is because Arteta's not going to give us a update anytime soon, I would imagine. It was originally said, I believe, that it was going to be after the next international break. But then I've seen people say it could be the one after that, which would be Game Week 12. Some people have been saying maybe it's after Christmas. We just don't know at this point. So while Odegaard is out, I expect Trossard to keep being in that first 11. But I think if I was buying one of them and it was a long-term thinking rather than just a short-term move for Southampton at home and Bournemouth away in 7 and 8, I'd probably just go for Martinelli. Because although if Odegaard comes back, Martinelli could get subbed early for Trossard, he's much more likely to start. He seems to have that left wing spot pretty much locked down at this point. So that's why I would probably dodge Trossard. If it's a short-term move and you want to go for a bit of a differential, then Trossard's fine, of course. But Martinelli is the longer-term pick, is probably where I would go. Moreno made his debut last night and came on. I'm not sure what Arteta's long-term plan is there, whether it's going to be Moreno, Rice and Odegaard. Not sure, right? And obviously we won't know until they're all fit and available. I'm not massively... I don't think they're going to play Partey, Rice and Moreno and drop Trossard out. I'm not sure. That feels a little bit too defensive, and I'm not sure that's how Arsenal would want to play. So I think while Odegaard is out, Trossard is probably fine. But I guess Moreno just provides another body that Arteta could use at some point. So if I was buying one of Martinelli or Trossard, I'd probably just go for Martinelli. Ben White missed out again. It was Timber right back and Calafiori left back. Timber went off, I think it was at half time. He went off pretty early. But I think that was just to manage him because he's played quite a few minutes. And then Calafiori actually went to right back. And Kivior played left back when Timber went off. Calafiori was getting forward quite a lot in that game and often going into midfield as well. He looks like a really nice pick. And I think he's gone down to 5.9, I want to say. 5.8 he is now. And Timber's only 5.5. Potentially... they are a nice cheaper way into that Arsenal defence because at this point, Gabriel's 6.2. So Timber's 0.7 million less and Calafiori's 0.4. If they both remain in the team and they keep Ben White out, then that is really good value. But I'm not sure how likely that is to happen. Like Ben White's only yellow flagged. He's not expected to be out for long. And I think Timber's played really well, by the way. And I think Calafiori's brilliant too. So I think Ben White is just not an FPL option anymore. He's obviously going to be a bit of a risk. But I don't think he's just going to be out of the team full time now. At some point, he's going to play right back. And then Timber or Calafiori could play left back. I suspect that the long-term plan is probably to have Calafiori in that 11 more often than not. But Timber's also played really well. Personally, I would just dodge it completely. I just wouldn't want that headache every week. And if I couldn't stretch to Gabriel, I would just buy Saliba. But I think it's pretty positive for anyone thinking of going for those other two options that they started again. So yeah, I'd go for Martinelli. Saka, Havertz, absolutely fine. If you want to go safe, it's got to be Saliba or Gabriel. So for Man City, there's a few interesting things to talk about. Phil Foden started this game, and after the match he said, I've had a very slow start to the season with a bit of illness and a bit of fatigue, but I'm getting back into it now and feeling more like myself. I believe he also got man of the match in this game as well. I know it wasn't exactly top level opposition, but it's great that he started. Good that he's building himself back up to full fitness. and he's played well too. And obviously that's a good sign when you're trying to get back into the 11 under Pep Guardiola. So I've got a feeling for people that are looking to take a punt on Foden, maybe this is the start of a run in the 11 for him, especially while Kevin De Bruyne is out. Now for De Bruyne, I don't think he's going to be out for that long, or he's not expected to be out long, potentially back after the international break, but he is going to miss Fulham at home. And you think if Foden is fit enough to play again, then he possibly will. And once he's in that 11, we've seen it before, he doesn't necessarily come straight back out. Now, before everyone jumps on him, expecting him to start every single game, there's no guarantee there. But if you want to get on at the start of a run, this might be the time to do it. Wait and see what Pep says on Friday. I think there's a good chance that Foden starts again. He was subbed off in the Champions League game last night. Akanji and Vardiol both started, but they were subbed early. I'd expect them to start again against Fulham. Haaland also played, got a goal. He was subbed off early too. He's going to start again as well. The other interesting points here, Ortega started. I don't think that's a massive surprise. He's always going to play the old game in the Champions League. As they get further through, Ederson will start instead. I don't think there's any concerns for Ederson owners in the league at least. Rico Lewis also started and Kyle Walker didn't. And this is where the headache starts. Well, does that mean Lewis is going to be benched this weekend? Possibly. He played the whole game. Walker's obviously had his rest. There is a good chance that Rico Lewis just won't start against Fulham. The positive sign is he played really well, judging by the numbers and the comments that came out afterwards. He put up something like 1.6 expected goal involvement, which is absolutely ridiculous for a player that's listed as a defender in FPL and only cost like 4.7 million. And I get it, again, the opposition wasn't very good, but still, the positions that he's picking up, it's just unreal. And I saw a quote this morning, sorry, not a quote, but a journalist, talking about Rico Lewis. He said, this was Joe Bray on Twitter, he said, Rico Lewis is not just a Kyle Walker replacement. He's doing the role of Rodri, De Bruyne, and even Alvarez at the moment. He even popped up at number 9 and left wing last night, a stupidly good player who will probably pop up in goal this weekend. So, look, I don't know what I can say about Rico Lewis. If you buy him, you're always going to have this headache about whether he plays, but the positive sign is he's playing really well. And at the weekend against Newcastle, he wasn't playing in defence, and he can start with Walker as well. He could just start in midfield and have Walker and Vardiol. It could be Rico Lewis on the left, Walker on the right, and Lewis inverts into midfield. I don't think Vardiol is going to miss out for what it's worth, but these are all things that can happen. So he's done himself no harm by playing really well last night, but he could just get rested because City can beat Fulham without him. So if I didn't own Rico Lewis, would I buy him? Possibly. But this is going to be one of those players where the longer you leave it, the worse it's going to get as a transfer. Because if you're going to get him, you want him for the good fixtures, and they start now. Like, if he starts Fulham at home and Wolves away, you're going to look at Southampton thinking, well, I should probably buy him. But then it's Bournemouth away, Brighton away, Spurs at home, Liverpool away. It would feel like there's very little point in doing that if there's still a bit of a headache around him. So I've just got to be honest. I do not know if Rico Lewis is going to start this weekend. If I had to put some money on it, I'd say he's getting benched because he played the whole game. And Vardiol and Walker both got a little bit of a rest in this game. So Walker didn't start. Vardiol came off early-ish. I think it was 75th minute. So I'd say probably no start. But in FPL, I'm probably going to have to play him because I own him. And if he does play, there's just potential for huge points. All right, let's get into some of your questions. So I'm stuck on captaincy this week. I can't decide between Salah or Palmer. Now, what I thought I would do is talk about the 4 main captain options people are going to be looking at for Game Week 7. Because there might be other dilemmas, like Haaland versus Palmer, Saka versus Salah, whatever it might be. So in first place, I've gone for Haaland against Fulham at home. Second place is Saka against Southampton at home. And then Salah and Palmer I actually found quite hard to split, which doesn't help the person that's asked this question. But I've gone for Salah in third place against Palace away, and then Palmer in fourth place against Forest at home. With Haaland, he's off the back of a blank against Newcastle. Only 1 goal last night in the Champions League. Most people expected him to score more. He hasn't scored a huge amount recently. Rodri is out for the season. De Bruyne is probably going to miss this game as well. Fulham have also been not bad defensively, but I still think that's a great fixture on paper. It's all well and good being okay defensively, but Fulham have had mostly good fixtures, and going away to the Etihad is always going to be difficult. And I've said this before, when Haaland's not playing Liverpool or Arsenal, he's always going to be high up in the captaincy conversation. And when it's a good home fixture, it's just difficult to back against him, especially when you look at what he's already done so far. Like, even against Arsenal, It was 1 goal. Best defence in the league. You've got hat-trick against Ipswich, 2 goals against Brentford, could have been a hat-trick, another hat-trick away to West Ham. That's not going to continue forever. We know that, right? He's just blanked against Newcastle, as I've said. This is such a good fixture. I think he's still got to be number 1, despite Rodri and De Bruyne probably missing out. If you want to go differential, then definitely back against Haaland. But if we're talking purely who I think will get the most points this week, Haaland is where my armband would be. With Saka, I think some people are getting a little bit concerned with the returns, and not the amount, but where they're coming from. So he's got 6 returns in 6 games, but 5 of them have been assists. And really, you want the goals for captaincy, and it's not quite there yet. And if you look at Salah's expected goals total on the FPL page, it's, I think, 3.8. Yeah, 3.8. Palmer, I think, is 3.7. I'm just going to double check that. Let me just find him here. Yeah, 3.7. Whereas if you go for Saka, it's only 1.7 so far. So his goal threat is not as high as the other two. But if that's ever going to turn around, it's going to be in a game against Southampton at home. He is one of the most, if not the most creative player in that Arsenal team. So he is going to be relied upon for creating chances. I just think if he's going to get goals, this is the kind of fixture, which is why I would have him ahead of Salah and Palmer this week. If I had all 3 of those players, I'm pretty sure I'd be going for Saka. I watched that game against Bournemouth, and Bournemouth got to 3 goals in the first half with relative ease. Southampton were better in the second half, but I just think Arsenal was so much better than Bournemouth. Like, they're going to create so many chances in that game. And look, there's a lot of talk going around that Haaland, Salah, Palmer are more explosive. They're more likely to go and get, 2, 3, 4 returns in a game. Saka is capable of doing that, and if he's going to do it against Southampton, so I think if you've got him, he's got to be pretty high up in captaincy. And then for Salah and Palmer, I mentioned earlier that I found it difficult to split them in terms of who is the better captain this week. And sometimes that can happen in FPL, right? You get decisions that are quite close and they're almost like a coin flip. And perhaps that is the case here. But I think for me, and I'm finding it difficult to explain this without making it sound like I don't think Palmer is the real deal, because I think he is. But I think there's a psychological thing where Salah's done it for so many years, and this is only Palmer's 2nd season for Chelsea, that I'm finding it difficult to say that he's as good, if not slightly better option than Salah in any given week. Obviously, if Palmer had Leicester at home and Salah had Man City away, it'd be an easy decision. But when it's close, I find it quite difficult not just to say that Salah is the better pick. And maybe he just is. It's not like Salah is washed up or anything like that, right? He's got 4 goals, 4 assists himself this year. His expected goals just as good as Palmer. So it's not like he's a terrible option. But I think if Salah had Forest at home and Palmer had Palace away, I would definitely say Salah. Whereas when Palmer's got the home fixture, I'm not saying definitely Palmer. So I think there is a little bit of, I wouldn't even say it's bias. I would just say it's a psychological thing where I find it difficult to not say that Salah is the better option. And he is, of course, brilliant. And maybe it is just a coin flip decision. But I want to be open that is probably why I've put Palmer in 4th. And I should also say, just because a player is in 4th place, it doesn't mean they're miles behind everyone else. If you want to go for Palmer over Saka or Salah over Haaland, you should do that. But for me, I think that is the order. Haaland, then Saka, then Salah just about. But like I said, flip a coin. And then Palmer. If you want to go for Palmer ahead of Salah, absolutely fine. They're both brilliant options. And often when they are both quite good, I'll often go for the home guy. So maybe I should have Palmer in 3rd place. Anyway, I don't think I can explain or talk about that anymore. Just go for Haaland if you got him. So nice and simple. Would you recommend buying McNeil or Semenyo? And I think if you're going this week or you're on Wildcard, something like that, it's probably got to be McNeil. I think the time to buy Semenyo was last week for the Southampton at home game. Yes, they've got Leicester away this week, which isn't bad either. But then it's Arsenal at home, Villa away, and City at home. Now, as a Semenyo owner, I actually don't mind playing him against Villa away. But 8 and 10 against Arsenal and City are tough. And part of the reason that I went for him is because I also got that Southampton game. I think after Man City, the fixtures aren't that bad. Brentford away, Brighton at home, Wolves away. Bournemouth will score goals. And Semenyo is one of their best goal threats. But it just doesn't feel like the right time to buy him. Whereas with McNeil, like Semenyo is currently 5.7 million. With McNeil, he's a little bit cheaper. I think he's 5.6. So it's only 0.1 million difference now. But still, a little bit cheaper. And the fixtures are just good for ages. So Newcastle at home, Ipswich away, Fulham at home, Southampton away, West Ham away, Brentford at home, Man United away, Wolves at home. There's just more consistent fixtures over the next 6-7 game weeks. So that is who I would probably go with. I still think, despite the fact he scored 2 goals last week, his goal threat is not particularly great. Like, he's put up 0.08 expected goals per 90, but he does create a lot of chances as well. And playing in this number 10 position is going to give him more chance to score goals than he usually would out wide. So I think if I was buying this week, I'd go McNeil. If we went back in time to game week 6, I still think I would buy Semenyo. But now you've lost that Southampton at home game, it probably makes more sense to buy the Everton player, especially when he's a little bit cheaper as well. So what are your thoughts on Tyler Dibling as a 5th midfielder? He's only 4.6 million and started as the number 9 against Bournemouth. Could be a decent option to fund Saka, Haaland and Palmer squads. Now, if you're looking to spend that little money on one of your midfield spots, Dibling is where I would go. I don't think there's any players around that price that are better. Like someone like Winks at Leicester, I think has started every single game so far. I'm just going to double check that. Yeah, 90 minutes every single match, and that will probably continue. But he's not going to go and get you many goals and assists. So for 0.1 million more, I would definitely rather have Dibling. And you're right that he did start as number 9 against Bournemouth. I don't think it went particularly well. And I think at the moment, Russell Martin is struggling a little bit, and he's constantly changing that forward line. Like Cameron Archer, Adam Armstrong, Brereton Diaz, none of them started the last game. I think it would be pretty surprising if that continued going forward. Now, I don't think that means that Dibling comes out of the team, but I don't think he's always going to play as the number 9. Last 3 matches, he's had 75 minutes against Bournemouth, 81 against Ipswich, 62 against Man United. I'm not going to pretend that I've watched him a lot, but the talk going around is that he's a massive talent, 1-4 now, and he's going to develop into this really good player. And while he's playing well, they will continue to start him. But I just worry about, not worry because he's only 4.6 million, but I just think at any point he could come out of the team. I think we shouldn't buy him thinking that he's now absolutely nailed, but also that might not matter because he's only 4.6 million. So if it helps you fund all those other moves that you've mentioned, I think he's fine. If it's a choice between paying 4.6 for Dibling or 5.2 for Rodgers, unless there's a massive upgrade you can make with that 0.6 million, I still rather have Rodgers because he's playing number 10 regularly for Aston Villa. And we'll see where he plays and how many minutes he gets in the Champions League tonight, I think it is. But he's also in a much stronger team as well. So I still think he's probably worth the extra money for a 5th midfield spot. That's probably your 8th attacker. I think some people are even going to play Rodgers as a 7th attacker. I don't think I'm quite there with Dibling yet, but that doesn't mean you can't buy him. For 4.6 million, he is potentially extremely good value. For most people who'll be an 8th attacker that just won't play that much, I think that's fine. So do you prefer to buy James Maddison or Brennan Johnson for Spurs? And I actually think this is a pretty close call. So let's run through both of them as options. James Maddison is currently 7.5 million, which is not a bad price whatsoever. But Brennan Johnson is 1.1 million less at 6.4. Now, each of you individually, if you're deciding between these two players, will have to look at your team and decide how well that 1.1 million could be spent. But it is definitely something to factor in your decision. So Brennan Johnson's a little bit cheaper. If we look at the stats so far this season, James Maddison has put up 0.35 expected goals per 90 and 0.51 expected assists. I've said this before, I would expect those numbers to come down, but right now they are brilliant. If he keeps that up, there's a huge amount of returns coming with the good fixtures that Spurs have. If you look at Brennan Johnson in comparison, his creativity is not there anywhere near the same as Maddison. You wouldn't expect it to be. It's 0.09 expected assists, but his goal threat is higher, 0.51. So in any given game, if Spurs are going to score, it's more likely to be Brennan Johnson than Maddison. So stats-wise, Maddison definitely takes it, but again, he is that little bit more expensive. If we look at the minutes, both of them are in the first 11 right now. Brennan Johnson's last 4 matches, 75, 69, 67 and 45 minutes. But with Odegaard currently injured, Brennan Johnson shouldn't have any concerns about his playing time. He's always going to get subbed off early, or pretty much always anyway, but he should be in that starting 11 more often than not. With Maddison, you've got 76, 87, 79 and 81 minutes. So the minutes are better, the stats are better, he just costs a little bit more. It's a tight call. The only thing I would say is, if Spurs get all their players fit, I think Johnson would then start missing more game time than Maddison would, or at least there's more chance of that happening. I think right now Brennan Johnson is in that first 11, playing really well, scoring goals. There's no need to take him out. But if everyone was to get fit and Johnson and Maddison both continue playing well, I think Maddison would be more likely to stay in the team. I just think the only reason he got dropped last year is because he went into that bad run of form after the injury. Like, he is just first choice. So it's whether that premium is worth paying, basically. And I'm not sure I've got a great conclusion on this. I guess if it's a straight up question of who do I think is going to score the most points over the good fixture runs that Spurs have from now until like game week 11, I'd have to say Maddison. I think it will probably be him. But if Brennan Johnson, if that money enables you to make a really good upgrade elsewhere, then he's not that far behind Maddison. So I think on average, for most people's squads, if you sent me like 1,000 squads where people were thinking of this decision, I think most of the time I would say Johnson, because I'd also say then you could spend 1.1 million on this other move. But in isolation, I think Maddison is a better pick than Johnson. Hopefully that helps. Some people are going to mention Kulusevski, who's even cheaper at 6.2. I said before the season started, I don't rate Kulusevski that high as an FPL pick. The underlying numbers are just never there. But he is playing this central role, and he is doing better than I thought he would in pre-season in that position, even though he's only got 1 goal, 1 assist so far. But again, you look at the numbers, and by the way, if you want to check this out, links in the description for Fantasy Football Hub, as always. They're still lower than both of those other two players. 0.22 non-penalty expected goals, 0.21 expected assists. So I think Johnson is worth the 0.2 over Kulusevski. I think Maddison is probably better than both if you can afford it. It's a tricky one, though, because I've said this before. Maddison is always one of those players that looks good, you put him in, and he doesn't do well. But I think if we're forgetting that, he looks like he's got huge potential over the next few weeks. So I prefer Maddison, unless you can make great use of that money. So I've seen this mentioned a few times, so let's just quickly discuss it. Is it season over already after Wildcard's failed so badly? Now, the simple answer is no. Of course it's not. There's still 32 game weeks to go. There's double game weeks and blank game weeks to manage. Chips to be played, mystery chip, whatever that ends up being. I'm sure FPL haven't figured it out yet. Lots of points on offer. And I like to think that, and maybe this is pure hope and optimism on my part, but if I can fall from 1.3 million to 2.7 million in a single week, why can't it go the other way as well? Like, part of the reason things went so bad is because I didn't have Palmer, didn't have Salah, I had Haaland and Saka, and they both blanked. What if in game week 7, Palmer and Salah blank, and Saka and Haaland score hat-tricks? I'm not saying that will happen, it's very unlikely, but it could. And then all of a sudden you're on a massive green arrow. So I think it's not the time to panic. Do I wish it had gone better? Of course, right? No one wants to get a massive red arrow like that, but it's still so early on in the season. There is really nothing to panic about. You've just got to, I don't know, stay calm with the team that you picked. And obviously, you know, it all depends on which squad you actually went with. There's lots of people out there that wildcarded in 6 with Palmer that are feeling a lot happier than those of us without him. Likewise, there's going to be people out there that have gone no Haaland for the whole season that have done really well. There's also going to be people that have not done well, and actually it only really turned around in game week 6 itself. So there's no reason why that can't happen for you later on this season. It might not happen in 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It might not happen for weeks, but it is possible. FPL, to a certain extent, it's just a grind over the whole season, and you've got to stay with it, try and keep making good decisions, and hope that it pays off. And sometimes it won't. And I hate to break it to people, there will be other really bad game weeks over this season. There just will be, right? So there's no point worrying about it. It's bad when you get such a bad week in a wildcard week as well. What can you do? This is FPL. It happens. So I'm not saying season over yet. If we get another few red arrows like that, maybe I will just admit defeat. But I'm still confident that this can be easily turned around. And I still think people overemphasize way too much overall rank at this stage of the season. And as I always say, if you're doing well, you should be loving it right now. And you're already ahead. And so it's probably easier to stay ahead. But it doesn't mean you're always going to be there. Likewise, it doesn't mean that if you're doing really badly right now, you can't end up with a really good overall rank. To put it this way, I'm 2.7 million. I'm not going to say easy, but I think it should be definitely possible top 100k, right? I will say it should be fair. Not fairly easy is not the right word I want to use here, but it's definitely more than possible to get top 100k. I'd still be pretty confident in top 50k being possible, possibly even more if things go really well. So a good finish is still more than possible if you're like 3, 4, 5 million right now. Because although the rank differences seem big, the points differences won't be quite so massive. Although that will start to even out a little bit as we go more into the season. So when we start getting to game week 20, if you're still like 3, 4 million, then you're probably in trouble. But after 6 game weeks, it's probably not as bad as everyone is making out. But like I said, that could just be pure hope on my part. If you've enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button, rate 5 stars if you listen on podcast, and I'll catch you again tomorrow.